And hello and welcome to the next Motivational Maps evening. This is our opportunity to network with people from all over the world. I know quite a lot of people from the UK here today, but we do have some others joining as well, which is fantastic. So thank you all for making the time. I'm Carol Gaskell from Full Potential Group, one of the senior practitioners, and I'll introduce you to the others in a minute. And the theme for this session is really looking at how to use motivational maps to help teams work together effectively. And I know lots of you on this session do lots of team events, so I think there's a huge amount of sharing that we can all do as we go through this. So I would just like the other practitioners to introduce themselves, and Bevis, I'm going to go to you first.
Thank you, Carol. Thanks. Lovely to see everyone. It's always really warm having so many people in the room together that are all interested in motivational mapping. So yeah, Magenta Coaching Solutions, we've been going since 2010. Got into personal development through neuro-linguistic programming course back in 2008 and then 2010, which changed the course of my life. And then I found motivational mapping in 2011. And that again changed the course of my life and helped me follow through and leave employment. And the rest, as they say, is history. 12 years on, we train motivational mapping, train neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, and thoroughly love working with and helping support coaches and consultants on their journey. So that's us. And thank you, Carol, for letting me go first.
And Kate, do you want to follow that?
Yeah, very quick introduction for me. So Kate Turner, Motivational Leadership. Good to see so many familiar faces and some new ones. And yeah, Motivational Maps came into my existence 2016, so a very long time ago. So good we named the company after it. So I'll hand on the baton to somebody else.
Susanna.
Hi, yeah, I'm Susanna Braidwaring from Aspirin Business Solutions. So we're a small family business focusing on leadership development in both people and business skills, and of course motivation. So I'm feeling that I've been, I thought you guys have perhaps been doing it longer than this, but I started Motivation Map back in 2010 when I first moved down to sunny Bournemouth and started our business full time. And it's very lovely to see everybody, and I'm really intrigued as to where Richard Knight's tan is coming from. So perhaps he'll let us know later. Haha.
Well, thing.
And Jane Thomas is actually helping and co-facilitating with me on the session tonight, and busy beavering away behind the system to make sure that all the breakout rooms are going to work. So Jane.
So fingers crossed they will. I've allocated you, but let's just hope it all works. So yeah, I'm Jane Thomas and I'm Director of Premier Life Skills. So we specialise very much in sort of well-being, resilience, and linking, I guess, motivational maps has been our thread, sort of right the way through sort of all of those different types of courses. And I've been a practitioner since, I have to look at the wall now, 2013. So yeah. Absolutely love it.
Thank you. And I know there's a lot of other wisdom in the room. And so obviously with motivational maps, and today we're talking about teams, I think all of us use motivational maps in teams in lots of different scenarios. And I also noticed, thank you, Sarah, for posting about the Motivational Maps LinkedIn group. So if any of you are looking at the chat, please feel free to let Sarah know about being part of that group. Because that could be really helpful to some of you. There's lots of different things that we can learn as we're going through all of this. And so as we get into just thinking about teams and just looking at what does that mean, I have to start with James's book on motivational maps for teams. How many people have read that book out of interest? Quite a number of hands, probably 50%, maybe 40%. It does, James uses a model at the beginning of the book to sort of set a context for team working, for those of you that work in teams. And there's quite a lot of really useful detail in applying the motivators to teams. So it's obviously one of James's 5 books that he's released on motivational maps, but can be a really good resource from a team point of view. So yes, we're getting into teams today, and we thought that we'd start as we get going with a first breakout, just to start connecting everybody together. And in this first breakout, how does motivation help teams become more effective? So how does motivation help teams become more effective from your experience? And Jane's going to set up the breakout rooms in a minute. And we've got one person facilitating each breakout room. And so that person will make some notes and feedback at the end so we can all learn from each other. Jane, are you all set?
I'm all set. I can't be allocated at the moment to a room, not quite sure why. So I'm just asking Sarah Stones, could you just facilitate room 4 for us, please?
Yeah.
Okay, then I am ready to open all the rooms.
Fantastic. So we're going to put you in breakouts and give you an opportunity for 15 minutes to have a discussion on how does motivation help teams be more effective.
Things there. One in particular was Desiree was talking about the link between motivation and communication and how important communication is in teams. And she said, we need to understand the motivation of our audience so that we can move them to action. I thought that was a beautiful phrase. We need to understand the motivation of our audience to move them to action. That's what we need to do in teams. So that's really important. Lots of other things, but Mark, Tyrrell, you said about how by understanding your role as a manager to help feed the motivations, that's you playing your part. But actually, by talking about motivational maps, you start to build the instruction manual for your team. Loved that. So many other things I could share, but we said 2, so they're my 2 this time.
Brilliant, thank you. And Susanna, I think you were in room 3.
Yes, we had lots as well. So firstly, about understanding each other better and how people's behaviour and choices may be driven by their motivators rather than something perhaps that we've said or we've done. So it depersonalizes someone's behaviour and helps us to kind of to get behind that. And the second thing really is then around, that was from Richard Knight, and then David Mays was talking about the top 3 motivators and how aligned they are to what we might expect given the role, and what's missing or where it might be moving in a different direction from what we might expect as well.
Thank you. It sounds like some very rich conversations and slightly different focus areas as well in each group. Fiona, you in room 1.
I was. So yeah, lots of the similar kind of things. I think if I'm picking out 2 things, the one would be understanding self before understanding everybody else in the team, you know, so I think coming from a leadership perspective, understanding where they are and the bigger picture. And then the one that was particularly interesting, I felt, was working with a team where there was concerns about racism and bullying, and how using the motivational maps, they were able to talk about differences and how we behave and understanding each other and avoiding labels through the motivators rather than necessarily coming on strongly in terms of diversity, but coming at it from a slightly different angle. I thought that was really useful.
Thank you. And Sarah, you were in room 4.
Yeah, again, we had lots of really interesting things coming up, and Steve was sharing how it opens people up to using their strengths and how to manage the team. And Simon was also saying about when we're working with people with very different motivational maps, just pairing them up and sending them off for a conversation can just open up so many people's eyes.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we can be so close to it that we don't actually realise how many light bulb moments can go on in simple things like pairing people up in teams and how much they can really get to know each other. Has anyone else got any burning insights that came out of that we've not heard so far that you think would be beneficial for everyone to listen to and learn from? Yes, Rosa, please.
Well, I noticed that one of the consistent themes was that it was an eye-opener and a great conversation starter.
And what in particular do you think sort of opened your eyes?
Well, because I have seen that myself, and I've done small groups, not to work as a team in one company, but I've done groups, and I've really seen it as an eye-opener and a revelation. People are usually surprised, even though something's validated, but the surprise factor is huge, because when your eyes are open that wide, then clarity comes and gets you more focused. So when people become more focused, it's much easier to have a forward-thinking conversation about anything, really, because and the more you know about who you are, the easier it is to step back and get to know about others. So you're not trying to repress any longer.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Susanna?
Kate mentioned about layering the motivational maps with other profiles, and in particular saying that sometimes there are, I'm not exactly sure the word you use, Kate, but my memory was sometimes the map will give you insights into someone's behavior or their character that perhaps other profiles aren't giving. So it's that benefit of having that layering of profiles.
Yeah, I just think it gives you an additional, as a insights practitioner, I find having layered the maps language on top, you can see where the energy comes from that fuels behavior. And it's really helped me to understand differences that may be more difficult to understand with just one level of information that you might get from something like insights or another behavioral profile. But you really get a sense, I think with maps you really get a sense of the energy, so you can just create a bit more respect and understanding amongst the team so that you can help each other be at your best more of the time and harness the energy of the team and also see what's missing.
Very important. Sometimes it's the unspoken stuff or maybe even blind spots that other team members notice, but they don't know how to articulate it. So maps can give a language to help people, but they feel safe around it. Anyone else with any burning insights they'd like to share? I'm just checking that I've not missed anybody with a hand up.
I was just going to add, Carol, those gaps are fantastic when we're then going on to recruit, because we can recruit people not only with the right skills and experience, but we can fill those motivational gaps.
Yeah, totally. And I know there's some really good applications of motivational maps to recruitment, and maybe that's a whole new topic that we might go into a deeper dive on for another session of this. But yes, talking about from a team perspective, understanding the team you've got and what that means, but also how you recruit and attract new talent into the team, or when team members change, and therefore what that does to the team by doing the motivational maps. So there's a real richness in that too. So that was like the starting point, just to get you a bit warmed up. And Richard, I notice your hand's up. Would you like to share anything else?
Just a quick point around sort of the corporate side of things and change. And I think the maps with the change index and that actual good reference point in terms of organizational change as companies go through it on a regular basis, very regular basis in some aspects. How is that team ready for that next bit of change? Because obviously that can change as well. The last big change that occurred may not be the same this time round, and a leader being able to understand that and the team being able to understand that they can put different things in place according to that change index, but also the individual aversion to change or the need for involvement sooner, and all those fantastic conversations around change as well.
Yeah. And I think absolutely right. And change and transformation is a real key topic for many corporations. And I think even comparing the risk index of different teams in an organization can be really helpful to look at who are the change makers and which teams are going to be have a greater appetite for change and risk than others, and therefore how you can use different teams to support organizational change. I'm just watching the nods and seeing if there's anything else or anybody else that would like one final piece on that, because we thought we'd now take this to the next level and to do another breakout. And feel free to put notes in the chat if you've got some comments that haven't been heard yet that could be valuable, because we'll be circulating the chat after this and a summary of the session as well as the recording. So this next breakout, thinking about using maps, and some of you I know have used them a lot in teams, some of you're maybe on this call to learn a bit more about how to use them effectively in teams. What we thought we'd brainstorm in this next breakout is what are the do's and don'ts for using maps effectively with teams. So what would you definitely do? Any mistakes you've made? What would you recommend people avoid doing, as well as strategies for success? So we're going to put you in breakouts again, and we'll give you again sort of probably about 12 minutes and then bounce you back and then do the same, and then we'll really pull everything together. So do's and don'ts for using motivational maps in teams. Have some good discussions. Some of this will spark off more thoughts, but hopefully the whole idea of this, it's a bit of a brainstorming to then follow up, and there's other people on the call that you might reach out to after this to really go in deeper around what this means for you. So I'm going to change the order this time. Susanna, I'm going to go with you first. Can you share what went on in room 3?
Lots went on in room 3. Do you want just 2 things, Carol?
You can have 3.
Oh, 3, wow, okay. So firstly, do keep the team leader informed of what's going to happen, the confidentiality that you're going to keep around the conversations, so that you're managing their behavior and how they interact with the team during this process of you working with their team. Don't assume that a resignation or an equally unexpected behavior that happens whilst you're mapping is a bad thing, okay? Quite often, usually, it's just revealed something that was already there, and it can lead to even better things and even winning more work as well, because it's revealed something that people knew about but was unspoken. So that's a don't. And don't underestimate how much time people enjoy talking about their motivational maps. So allow enough time for that and structure the conversations accordingly.
Thank you. They were really good points. And I think to that point about the time, I know it's easy as a facilitator to plan in lots of things, and then it starts to sort of go a bit askew because people go off on a tangent around something. But sometimes those conversations, especially with teams and getting into the dynamics and the behavior and the energy and the beliefs, can be super, super important. But it is a bit harder to plan sometimes with the team dynamics. Okay, Sarah, are you happy to go next?
Yeah, so we had a talk around consent and making sure that you get consent to share right at the beginning of the process, which is really important. And reframing and using the right language and making sure that people know that no motivators are any better than any others. It's also one of the things we talked about. And then we had quite a discussion about sharing scores, because and whether you should share the whole team table or whether you share it minus the motivation audit at the end.
And what was the consensus?
I don't know whether we came to a consensus. I think it depends on who you're working with and what their scores are and what the agreement is. It's also about, in my mind, I don't know about the rest of the group, but it's about what are the aims of the project.
Yes. And I think these are a bit circular, aren't they? Because it goes back into the contracting at the front and the confidentiality at the front and what the outcomes are looking for and where people want to go with that. So yeah, there's lots of, and I think it's one thing doing a motivational map briefing with an individual and coaching an individual, but when you've got multiple people and multiple dynamics going on, you've got all those individuals, plus you've got the dynamic of the team as a collective, or sometimes sub teams within a team. So we're holding all of that as facilitators, aren't we? Okay, I can see lots of nodding going on here. So I'm going to go to Fiona, your group.
Yeah, so lots of stuff that we agreed on, but a few things where there was different thought approaches to it. Definite things to do with top-down approach. So management first, getting buy-in from the management, helping them to understand where they are in terms of their leadership. There was a definite don't share the PMA score because it can be destructive, and inevitably what happens when people are talking about their maps, they end up sharing it anyway, so but that's their choice. Different approaches around whether to actually share, whether to do the one-to-ones first or whether to have a team workshop first to explain about motivation and the maps and how they work and whatnot. So there was a couple of different things around that. And the other thing that came out of it was not to help people not to understand that not to use the motivation score as a method for, say, recruitment. It's information. It is not a decision maker. Yeah.
Thank you. A lot of rich gems in there, and I'm watching people taking notes as we're going through, and I think it's obviously sparking further questions as well as thoughts on this. Kate, I'm going to hand over to you to do a summary of your room.
Yeah, many similar points, and I love the fact there's debate on some. We had the same in ours as well, which is it's about adapting to the audience, as you've rightly said. One was around how much as a facilitator you really do need time to analyse and digest the information. Don't think you can just walk into, just because you do loads of individual debriefs, don't think this is the same. It's quite different. So do make sure that you give yourself the amount of time you need to fully digest the data so that you can be present for the group. A second one was make sure that you're being very clear that the motivator names are a description, not a prescription, that they're not intended as labels. Some will try and own the label, others won't, but show good practice around that. So not calling people, oh, you're the searcher, but also make sure that people have got time to dissect that label, searcher, into revealing the other values it stands for, so that people can recognize it's not just one definition. I think that's really important. And then lastly, on those tricky PMA scores, making sure that if you do share them, that you're not seeing comparison. So not saying things that's good, that's bad, that's high, that's low, but also making the point that, my 6 might be your 8. We're different people. It's a subjective score and it means what it means to you. There's no prize for getting the highest score here. So making it very clear about that. Thanks, Kate. And I think also to that point about the PMA, because it is
potentially quite a sensitive issue, especially in organizations and corporations, and people start looking at, oh, well, I'm 62 and he's 54, and what does this mean? And I think that also reminding people that it's how satisfied they are with their motivators. Because I know we sort of say motivation satisfaction score, but it is their satisfaction with the motivator, and that satisfaction can go up and down. So I think lots of interesting nuggets there. And also you talking about the description versus the prescription. I like that. So can I just open up to the room? Anything missing that happened in your conversation that you think would be valuable to add?
Can I go?
Yeah, Heath.
It's just one thing that we're all on here about the maps, but one thing we're talking about the do's and don'ts, but actually my builder's sort of coming in here. Team maps is far more lucrative than doing individuals. So if you can get into the team as a coach, as a trainer, then it's far better for you, far better for the bank balance.
Thank you, Heath. And yes, because you get all the individuals, and depending if you do one-to-ones with the individuals, and then you've got the group, and whether you do the group before, sometimes you might, and to that point, you might do a little intro with the group first. And if you're Heath with his builder, you'll do an intro, then you'll do some one-to-ones, and you'll do a debriefing and consultancy with the organization, and then you'll do a follow-up interactive session. You can break this down to lots of different components, depending.
Don't forget the 3 team follow-ons on a 3 monthly basis as well, on top of that, just to make sure all that's working.
Yeah. So monitoring the team every 3 months. What other teams in the business would benefit from this? Who else can we help? All those great questions. Anyone else with anything they'd like to add?
Just one thing for me, Carol, and it just links to what Kate was saying. In our room, we were talking about allowing people to sort of define what the motivations mean for them, and not getting hung up on this is what the textbook says it is. It's about, okay, you know, getting them talking about what it means for them at a personal level is far more powerful than allowing sort of drilling home the textbook piece.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially when you're in the team dynamics, you know, Kate used that word labeling, and we try to avoid the labeling, but especially if it's like, oh, you're a defender, so you're the defender in the team, and actually that person actually saying what that means for them. They might be the guardian, they're protecting people, or it's whatever it means to them, and that really builds the team understanding.
Yeah.
So thanks, David. Fiona, you've got your hand up as well.
Yeah, and this was really just something else from the team, it's not mine personally, was making sure that the manager feeds out to the team what it is, what's the why, how it's going to work, rather than just landing it on people. Get him, she, to actually share that information.
Yeah, and I think the sort of setup and the contextualizing at the front is super, super important, but also the follow through afterwards, because sometimes people have an event, it's all great, but it's actually what's happening with all this and what you're doing with my data. Mark.
No, it's just something I thought that sometimes you get the team where there's one person with the odd motivator, and they start feeling a bit sort of uncomfortable, don't they? So I tend to sort of think about, well, what would happen if that wasn't in, that was missing from the team. So let's go stick with builder, as we're talking about builder. So the one person has got high builder, you think about, well, what commercial focus would you have if that person wasn't here, and that sort of stuff. So just emphasizing that it's not, it can quite easily be seen as a negative, but what you want to see is actually what's the positive influence that it brings to the team.
Thank you, Mark.
Heath, any response to that?
No response. I'm forever the builder, I am. It's always looking for the next one. Who's buying the maps next? Come on.
Right. Well, keep us all in check. And Sarah's got a thumbs up on that, so that's good. So hopefully this has sort of whet your appetite, got you thinking about how you're currently using team maps, but where you might want to take it to the next level. And it might have opened up more questions, which again, you can connect with people through the chat. You might want to speak to your senior practitioner or another practitioner on this call, and brainstorm best practice. And I think one of the things with maps is there's no set way. So, it's as we said right at the beginning, it's understanding what are the needs of the client, and one team might need something that's different from another team, or one organization might have a different approach. So it's understanding what they need, and then how can we fit the different variables into that to add most value. And there's a whole richness that we can share on this, and you will get notes around this at the end. And obviously another plug for James's book, because there's a lot of extra information in here if any of you want to have a look at that. So lots of information. And I suppose where I just like to go before we close, because I'm very mindful of time, is our next meeting. So the next meeting is scheduled for the 4th of September, and it will be the same time as the current one. So there'll be reminders around that, and we would love to hear about burning topics that you would like us to feature as part of the next session or the subsequent sessions. I know today there was quite a little bit around retention and around recruitment, but you might have a burning topic that you think, yes, let's do a deep dive on that. So please let us know any thoughts, ideas you've got for what you would like to learn next. Any final pearls of wisdom from any of the senior practitioners before we close off?
Can I just add into, especially if you're looking at the team map profiles, how you can introduce the 5 elements model using the team map, because that's also, it's in the leadership book around how the model works, but it's worth looking at that as well, because that again links very much into how that team might be. Again, as Richard said, I know that Richard's had to leave, but how they're managing sort of change and how they generally sort of look at, sort of project management, the way that they actually conduct themselves within their team profiles. So that's another sort of tool that I would ask you to maybe have a look at and see how you might be able to integrate that into a team map session.
I think 2 other books I'm just thinking of. One of my Bibles is Peter Hawkins. I don't know if any of you've seen Leadership Team Coaching. It's a really great resource for coaching teams, but Motivational Maps fits really nicely for me into his methodology. And Georgina Wustra, who some of you probably know, Mastering the Art of Team Coaching. Again, it's a great book with lots of tools and techniques in it. And she doesn't talk about motivational maps, unfortunately. Hopefully she will in her follow-up one. But again, you can use motivational maps against some of the things that she talks about in here. And I think there's lots of other books, so people might want to put that in the chat as we close. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for everyone joining and sharing their thoughts. And I hope that you can take your team coaching and your team maps to the next level as a result of this session. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in September.